Why did Oden dance for 5 years? This was a question that boggled my mind for quite some time, despite receiving clarification in 971. We learned that Oden was being faced with a difficult choice, and he decided to take up Orochi's offer, sacrificing his reputation, his status, and going through misery in the process. At the same time, we also don't know how far Orochi really blackmailed Oden. He could have had extra leverage by playing with the fate of Oden's late father, or the scar Toki received on her left eye from an arrow. Combined, both of these events could be interpreted as a reminder of the constant threat Oden's family would be exposed to. So, what would happen if Oden did not dance for 5 years? How can we envision this alternate timeline, and if so, how drastic would the story change? For starters, we have to take into account what was at stake. Back then, Orochi made a point that Oden choosing the warlike path would end in more than he bargained for. And he could be right there. Oden is a person of great compassion and honor. He won't stand to see innocents suffer that kind of a horrible fate, you may say. However, Oden's fatal flaw and his tragedy as a character is that he does not know how to ask for help. Instead, he puts the entire burden of the country on his shoulders, literally. Even when he finally breaks after 5 years, he did not ask his retainers for assistance. He simply stated what was to be done. What if Oden lived up to his reputation, unwavered by the sacrifices? I mean, Kaido seemed to think so. What if Oden asked for help? This is where we begin our alternate scenario. First of all, we will continue with the original timeline. Have Oden accept the offer and dance in front of everyone. But this time, the charade will last for long. Immediately after, Oden returns to his castle in the Kuri region and explains to his retainers what happened, instead of keeping the truth from them. Following his character in the story, Oden would still put matters into his own hands, beginning to plan an attack that would defeat both Kaido and Orochi. But he knew he could not do it alone. His answer would be the Yakuza, specifically Hyogoro of the Flower, an individual who Oden held the utmost respect for, a feeling that was mutual. You see, during Oden's 5 years of dancing, Hyogoro and his wife were one of the few figures who remained on his side. His wife even complimented his dancing. But Hyogoro would not be the only person Oden thinks of. Yasue is another candidate. After Oden meets up with him and explains the situation, Yasue would gladly help him in his plight. On the eve of the battle, Yasue travels to Oden's castle with his men in order to protect the Kozuki family against a possible attack. Our next item on the list is Kanjuro. With Kanjuro, there's actually quite a lot of flexibility you can do, but personally, I would have him continue sending messages discreetly using his ability. In this way, we can keep the consistency of Kanjuro informing Orochi, who would then proceed to inform Kaido. Keep in mind that at this point in time, Kaido does not actually know that Kanjuro is a spy. He sees Kanjuro as the scabbard, and therefore he would not have trusted Kanjuro, unless Orochi of course reveals it. The final person that I would like to touch upon is the old hag, Kurozumi Higurashi, because we don't know when exactly she got Momo's disguise. In order to get such a disguise, she would have to touch his face, but I don't believe that happened so quickly 25 years ago. You can take her as you will, whether she intervenes or not in your own interpretation. Now, upon reading the news that Oden is amassing an army to cut off his head, Kaido would immediately be alarmed. But he also maintains his cool. This is Oden after all, the madman he heard so much about who does not hesitate. The day of the battle has arrived. Oden, followed by his scabbards and Hyogoro with the samurai-yakuza army, would march towards Onigashima. Just like in the actual story, I believe Kaido will confront them in the Udon region, resulting in similar exchanges of Oden questioning how he was prepared and Kaido mentioning a possible spy. Kaido may even taunt Oden for dancing that one time too. By the way, a quick little point, it's possible his mansion at Onigashima wasn't yet built, but we're just gonna pretend that it was at this point in time. Not to mention, this gives Kaido even more of a reason to intervene because it would be brand spanking new, and he doesn't want it to be destroyed, right? It's his home. After the exchange, Oden and Hyogoro both attack. The scabbards and the rest of the army follow in close pursuit, charging towards the beast pirates. The amount of pirates would be less this time, since it was 25 years ago, they would not have been as well equipped. Furthermore, we don't know if King and Queen have been in the crew for this long. The earliest we saw so far is 23 years ago when Moria attacked. I would like to think that they were around and therefore would pose a challenge for the Scabbards. However, with Hyogoro in the equation, you can have him take on one of the commanders or even stick with Oden himself. The greater numbers on the Samurai Yakuza side would easily overwhelm Kaido's quote-unquote bare bones crew, which at this point in time would not even number 1,000. Again, this highlights what Kaido said about sensing a disadvantage and it being a difficult battle if the Yakuza were involved. So what do we do about Kaido himself? Well, if you want to stay consistent, we can have Oden scar Kaido during the fight in the same way as occurred in the story, although this time we also have Hyogoro watching Oden's back at all times, and if possible he could even intervene. Kaido would not last for long, and the old hag can't intervene this time to distract Oden. Even if she did, Hyogoro would have been observant enough to defend Oden against Kaido's impending club attack. Regardless, I definitely see Oden slicing Kaido's head during his second strike. With Kaido dead and the fate of the Beast Pirate sealed, the question now lies on what we'll do with Orochi. Orochi at this time would probably be happily feasting, confident that his partner will make short work of the army and secure themselves from any other threats for the rest of the regime. This feeling immediately flies out of the window once Oden and the rest return to confront him. Faced with the realization that Kaido is dead, Orochi and Higurashi, if she did not intervene, would panic. Semimaru, the elderly man possessing the Baribari no Mi fruit, would immediately make a shield to protect them. However, this won't really work in the long run considering they have nowhere else to go and Oden already had to deal with it once before. Eventually, the fate of Orochi, if he isn't immediately killed, would be up for debate, and the Kozuki clan claimed the rightful spot of shogunate. Now, I'm not really sure what we can do with Kanjuro at this point since he doesn't really have a purpose anymore. Most likely, sometime later, you can have Kanjuro, who has now failed his task and who now had an abrupt end to the acting career, commit seppuku. Alternatively, you can have Kanjuro admit the truth and perhaps Oden forgives him. In this way, the lineage of the Kurozumi clan may not be extinguished, but instead it would be redeemed. In the future, Oden would open up the borders of Wano, and the aftermath of such an effect we felt across the country and the entire world. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this video well. If you have your own scenario or interpretation, then share them in the comments below. Until next time.